If you just jump into the average path right away, then you're going to be average. If you jump into the average path later, you're still going to be average. So you might as well like try.
That was Zach Litoff back today on the Running Effect podcast. It's an honor and a privilege to welcome Zach back onto the podcast. If you're not familiar with him, I kind of have deemed him the Renaissance athlete. He actually created our latest logo and kind of rebranded the Running Effect in 2023. So the logo of the Running Effect, Zach is the man behind that, our newsletter logo as well, a bunch of different projects. Zach is the guy behind it all, and I'm a small fish in his big pond. He's worked with New Balance, Nike, Apple, a whole plethora of races and companies. He's also quite the accomplished athlete. He ran for Santa Clara back in the day. He made the NCAA Outdoor National Championship meet in the steeplechase. And in today's conversation, we recap a lot of the projects that Zach has been up to, including his recent kind of photo book, coffee table book, The Last Olympic Trials, which I have a copy of. It's absolutely remarkable. We dive into that. We dive into his thoughts on Grand Slam track, his identity shifting within the sport, as well as running this unique artistic business, all sorts of different subjects. It's a conversation with two friends. I'm confident you guys are going to enjoy it. And when you do, share it with a friend, a family member, a teammate, someone who you think would find value and benefit from it. Hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss another episode, and give us a 5-star review to help us out. With all those notes aside, I hope you all enjoy this conversation with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Zach Litoff. Mr. Zach Litoff, I think I named you the Renaissance athlete 2 years ago. I really actually like that title. Yeah. I don't know why I don't use it more for you. How you doing, man? Welcome back.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here.
A lot of things to discuss and converse about. But speaking of that first time I had you on the podcast, only time thus far, came out May 26th, 2023. So coming up on 2 years ago. Wow. I'll give you a softball question, not actually, to start out. What are some of the biggest ways you feel like you've grown both in your work, running, as a person over the last 2 years since I last spoke with you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot in my life has changed in the last 2 years. I remember filming that podcast, so it's crazy to like think back at where I was then and where I am now. But I mean, I would say I've grown up a lot. I'm a lot more like confident in what I'm doing and like knowing kind of the path I'm on. Running has kind of gone from like the number one priority to like still the number one priority, but in a very different way. I've kind of like shifted my focus from being a competitive athlete to kind of being a like competitive artist in the athlete space. And then there was a period where I was running a little less, and now I'm running a ton again. So like, it's been good to kind of refine my groove as far as also running. But yeah, I mean, lots of changes have happened, and then I've kind of come back around on a lot of them as well. I had a stint where I was working, not doing exactly what I'm doing now. I did like a 6-month contract at Apple, which was cool, but happy to be where I am now.
Would you say you care more about your own personal running or Litoff Studios, your work?
Yeah, I would say I probably care more about Litoff Studios than my running now, which is refreshing because it allows me to kind of like really enjoy my own personal running. Like, it's not as stressful. I would say for a long period of my life, like my own personal running was my number one priority. And I don't regret that, nor do I ever think that wasn't fun. Like, having running be the thing you care the most about is probably one of the funnest things you can do. And it's been cool to kind of shift that into something that for me, I can like care about for another very long arc of my life.
I was not a D1 athlete, nor will I ever be at this point. Unfortunately, the dream died a few years ago.
You missed your opportunity.
I really did. But I think something I can relate to there is, you know, running was the most important thing in my life for many, many years. I was obsessive about it. And I think I still want to come back to the sport in a competitive lens of some form or fashion one day. And by that, I mean, probably running like a 2:30, 2:29 marathon, like nothing fancy. But I do love the aspect of like running was a part of my life. It was really important. And I found a really unique niche within the sport to stay within it. And I almost appreciate this more now than I ever did my actual running. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that as it applies to you, where it's like your work almost in the book that you just came out that we'll talk about, like things like that will always cement your place in the sport, but in a really unique way where like 10 years ago, you probably, or 5 years ago, if I came to you and I was like, you're going to be at the Olympic trials, you may have thought like, oh, as an athlete, but in reality, it's like creating something that's never been
Yeah.
done before. It's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you would relate to it in a way very similar to me, just because we both work within the kind of running world. But I mean, it's definitely not what I expected as far as what my role would be in the running world, but it's amazing because it's more sustainable in a sense. Like, I don't feel like now I have any like time limit on my time in the running world. I can do whatever I want and express myself however I want, and it feels like freeing in that sense. And I feel like everything I did, I learned from running a little bit. I always commonly say that, but I mean, it's definitely a transition, and I think you would probably get it as well. Like changing what you care about isn't always easy. It kind of hurts sometimes, but like it's definitely always better on the other side. And I still care about running just as much. I now also care about other things, if not the same or more.
Was it hard to shift your identity? I think that's something when I
Yeah.
talk to a lot of people, both on the podcast and
Mm-hmm.
outside of it, that people struggle with is like coming to terms with the fact that I don't want to speak to you because if you made a
Mm-hmm.
steeplechase team, I would not be shocked or Jack Litoff.
Yeah,
But like
fair. I
at
mean,
least for me, like
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
never gonna be as good as I could have been if I only explored running, and my
No, I
identity
mean, I get the
fully
question you're
shifted.
asking, and I'm sure I could jump back in and see how fit I could get and like have a chance. But I mean, that identity change, not that it couldn't happen again and go back, but it definitely happened, and it definitely was hard, to like kind of hang up the spikes a little bit in a way and change your transition. Like it was something I feel like if anyone asked me who I was, the first thing I would put was like Zach Litoff dash athlete, dash runner, maybe dash steeplechaser. Like that was kind of the number one thing in my identity. Um, and the way my running career ended was definitely like a painful end in a sense. It was like perfect in many ways as well. It was like a nice crescendo, but it was like almost making it to the trials. I think I was one spot out. And so to kind of end on that and be like, well, that's where it was. Like that's the end of my track career. Was very painful. Then kind of I definitely had like a couple month period of scrambling and figuring out who I was. But I think everyone goes through that. And it's something that like you said, you've talked to a lot of runners about. Like a lot of runners I talk to now on the other side of collegiate running, it's like something we can bond about and like it's a nice common motif of running is kind of refining who you are. And it's the same type of thing when you get into running, you like explore and you're like, oh, wow, this is who I am and I love this. And you kind of get to redo that again, which is awesome.
Let's talk about, I think it probably would have been July of 2023. So we talked May of 2023. At that
Mm-hmm.
point, you were definitely established within the running world. I think you had, maybe 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 followers on
Yeah.
Instagram. You had just made like my logo, my whole rebrand. And so that was really fun to talk about in that conversation. And I think at that point you had worked with maybe New Balance or Nike like once or twice, but you were still kind of a baby within Litoff
Totally.
Studios.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like my version of like right out of high school and like about
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
take a gap year. And it's kind of cool because that was me at that time when I was talking to you. And I think we've like
Mm-hmm.
grown separately, but like really similar paces, which is cool. But I want to
Totally.
talk about July 2023. I think
Mm-hmm.
that was the first time I ever met you at the US
Yeah.
Championships. You
Yeah.
drive down with a bunch of burritos in your car.
Mm-hmm.
Take me through that
Totally.
whole week and weekend and how it was transformative
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. That was a very transformative weekend. It was kind of like if I'm going to do this, I have to do it now type of thing. Like I had worked with Nike once. I was definitely a baby in the running world and living in San Francisco is expensive. And I was like, I gotta do something to kind of get my name out there, meet more people. Like, you know, kind of I have to do the thing to make my career like a real option. And I know everyone's going to be in Eugene, so I got to get there. So I drove up with like 20 pre-made burritos in my car, and I was like, maybe I'll sleep in my car, maybe I'll sleep at a friend's house. We'll see. And I got there and I slept at some friends' houses, and it was pretty great. And it was definitely an experience because that was also a moment where I showed up and it was like, this isn't how I wanted to be here. Like I wanted to be here running, and it was like sad in many ways, but also was like, I'm just gonna like put this effort into creating something. And at that point, I was also like, I didn't want to offend anyone or burn any bridges, so I like was stuck very much to the rules of creating at the trials, which is something I didn't do as much this last time. But I ended up kind of experimenting and finding this Polaroid medium where I would like draw over Polaroids, and I met so many people. And I kind of came back from that having, made connections with other brands and kind of like finding that people liked my work as much as I liked making it, and that I actually maybe had a chance to like continue to pursue this.
What would you say was the most impactful conversation you had that week, if you can remember
Um,
or pin it down to one?
yeah, I think I don't know if I could pin down to one, but I had one really good conversation. It was either, I think it was with Craig Lutz, maybe with you. It was at the like Hoka Shakeout, and it was just kind of talking about the running world and what I wanted to do. And it was very much like, oh yeah, like we'd love to bring you on for some projects. And it was like simple, but like, oh, maybe there is a want for this. And then there was another one where it was with like Joe Hale, Matt Wisner, Carter, those guys, and they were kind of talking about what they were building at the time, which for Joe kind of turned into Footstep, and for the rest of them was an era of new gen, and now they're doing their own thing. And just kind of being like, oh, there are other people that are kind of sending it and doing what I'm doing, and I'm not alone. Also, they gave me their ideas on what I should do, and it's very insightful and cool.
What did the moment before the leap of faith feel like? Because I think that'd be important to
Mm-hmm.
share to people who have that dream, and they're
Yeah,
probably in that like pre-Eugene moment for you, where they even haven't decided to like take that
yeah,
trip or take that risk or take that step
totally.
yet, but they feel the yearning to do it.
Yeah, I feel like it's something I feel like very similar to racing, honestly. Like when you're training for racing and you get to the point where like, you finish your pre-race and now there's nothing you can do and you're kind of just like really nervous and like it's all you can think about and you're like, I don't know how this race is going to go. I'm scared. Like it's definitely like an anxiety inducing feeling. And then the second I left was almost like when you get on the starting line and all of a sudden you're like locked in. Like I feel like once you're on the starting line, you're not nervous anymore, but the whole like warm up and like the whole 24 hours before, it's like all you can think about. And I think it was definitely like you said, it's a leap of faith. Like you're not comfortable doing that. You just kind of have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and just like give it your best.
One of my favorite quotes as of late is, don't follow what most people do because you don't want the results that most people get. The average person is obese, likely to be divorced, and has less than $1,000 in the bank. It feels
Yeah,
safe to do what everyone else is doing, but it's actually a terrible decision.
yeah, I relate to that. And yeah, I think more people should follow their dreams a little bit, with moderation probably, but like the average person, like you said, is not. If you take the average of everyone, it's not what you want to be. So, you
Right.
know, yeah.
I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and I actually brought up that quote, which is why it was kind of at the
Mm-hmm.
forefront of my mind. And he was using his family member, so
Mm-hmm.
loving, good conversation, good discussion. But he was using like everyone else as like the metric to fall back on, and I was like, it's weird how we do that in society when quote unquote everyone else is generally miserable with their lives. Like, why are we
Yeah.
resorting back to them for like ideal life wisdom or
Mm-hmm.
advice or like inspiration? It's like
Totally. I mean, I feel
that's
like
probably
it's
not the
human
best thing to
instinct a
do.
little bit, like safety in a group. You kind of just like feel like what everyone's doing should be the best thing. And maybe it says something about our society that the average isn't that right now. But I feel like it is like, it's almost the safe opportunity to kind of like try and carve your own path. Like that's maybe the safest way to be happy right now is to just listen to yourself and do what you know you have to do.
Is there a Zach Litoff like blueprint for following your dreams, or what's the condensed off
Yeah.
the top of the brain version of it?
I mean, I would say the condensed blueprint is you know what you want to do. Sometimes you don't, but you do. Like there's that voice in the back of your head when you're making a decision that doesn't feel like what you want to be doing. Um, just listen to that voice. Try not to block it out.
What would you say to those who are scared of doing that?
Um, you're gonna regret it. Like worst case scenario, it doesn't work, and now you can go back to your other option. Like if you don't at least try, then it will haunt you forever. At least that's something I commonly think about. And if you do try and it doesn't work, then you'll have learned something and you can pivot and you'll be like, yeah, I tried, and you won't regret it. And it's not like you're gonna be far behind in your next path because you've learned something. If you just jump into the average path right away, then you're gonna be average. If you jump into the average path later, you're still gonna be average. So you might as well like try. And especially I think right now, like effort, we're in this like era that I love where effort is cool again. Like I feel like we were, go back 10 years ago, it was like everyone like, was trying to not try and things. So it was like cool to not try. And I don't know if it's social media or what's changed, but I feel like right now it's cool to try. So take advantage of that and give it your best effort.
Off of what you were saying there, for someone who has like two desires of their heart tugging at them,
Mm-hmm.
how do you decide which one is more important? Because you talked about like the regret of
Hmm.
inaction, right? And using
Yeah.
you specifically as like a case study. I think in your
Hmm.
mind, when you could have gone through this process, it's like two paths, like Litoff Studios and what that looks like, or sell all my belongings and trade in Boulder and see if I can become a professional runner. And
Yeah.
because you did Litoff Studios, you probably couldn't do the professional, like,
Totally.
let's explore that and see if I can make the Olympics route. So how did you
Mhm.
decide which of the two, or maybe there were more than two paths to actually go
Yeah.
down and pursue?
I mean, I would say my advice is listen to the voice in your head, but in theory, you never really know. And I think what I did kind of shows maybe one way to go about it is my first like 6 months after collegiate running, I trained really hard and didn't run a race. I ran one race kind of at the end, but like if I wanted to like change my decision, I had a whole season to do it, and I was in shape, ready to do it. So I think one thing as well is like I've learned this especially now as I'm training. You can get a lot of the benefit. Those one percenters are just that. They're one percenters. If you want to compete at the best level, you need to do them. But if you want to stay ready, you don't necessarily need to do them. Like it's not. It's like I was putting my one percenters into art and design at that point, but my one percenters weren't there in running. But if I switched, it's not like I would have been that far behind. I maybe would have been a quarter of a percent behind. And I gave it my go in art and found out that's what I wanted. So I would say like, you don't need to put all your eggs in one basket, but you do need to have a priority and don't be afraid to pivot. But like pick one. If it doesn't work, switch.
Can you speak to the aspect of literally just starting and doing? Because I think we'll use art as an example, and like some of the
Yeah.
work that you do, which
Hmm.
if people have never heard the name Zach Litoff before, one, you're living under a rock. Two, he's done my logo, so you have seen his work before. And
Yeah.
three, go check him out in the show notes and check out his work. But like, I think a lot of people get in this like mental, just like they almost self-gratify themselves by like mentally thinking through what they could be doing. And I'm
Hmm.
like, well, what have you done? And they're like, oh, I'm an artist. Okay, what have you done? Well,
Yeah.
I've
It's like
thought
a
about my
goal.
like
It's
5-year
like,
blueprint. Like, have
yeah.
you done anything? And they're like, no. So
Yeah.
how important do you think it is to actually like just do the work and
Hmm.
let the rest reveal itself? Because I think so many people think but they don't do, and that's
Yeah,
what
I think a
separates the
lot of
good from the
people
great.
think that they don't do. And I think we're in a world that kind of makes that easy. It's easy to talk about ideas and it's hard to execute them. But we're also in a world where it's getting so much easier to do now. The technology's never been more accessible. And I think you just have to do it, like especially in art, like you could talk about how great of an artist you want to be. But you just have to make art. And if it's bad, it's fine. I think a lot of the talking but not doing comes from a fear of failure. Um, and I think art is a kind of good example of how that's like a great thing, but a bad, there, anyone who does art, your first thing is going to be the worst thing you do. It's probably going to be the same in whatever you pursue. So like, you just got to get that over with. But also like, think about your favorite musical artists. Like when you think of their first album, you probably like it, or if you don't judge them for it. Like I
You
love
just
Kendrick
don't
Lamar.
listen.
His first album is like not his best album. We can all, maybe not we can all, but in my opinion, first album's not his best album. It gets better. But he had to do that. Like you got to start somewhere. You should get it out of the way now because it's only going to get harder. Like I wish I started Instagram earlier. I wish I started posting earlier. I wish like I started at a pretty good time. It could have been better. Like there's never a better day than right now. And you're only going to wish that you had started one day earlier if you start tomorrow.
For those listening who think I'm all over the place, one, I am, but two, that stems from friendship with Zach and just
Yeah.
catching up here. A few running subjects I want to get your
Yeah,
thoughts and your takes on,
totally.
just being within the industry.
Hmm.
Let's start out with Grand Slam track. What are your thoughts on
Yes.
this? Do you actually think it'll be pivotal for the sport or no?
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see how it goes. I think it will be pivotal whether it's the end all be all or not. It's a step in the direction towards the right thing. So it's pivotal by definition. It's a pivot on the way running's being done. I really wish they had the photographers not take so many pictures of the empty stands. That's my like wild take is like, you know, It didn't seem like it was that busy in Kingston, and that's to be expected. It's their first meet. It's not in America. It's like harder to get people there. But I feel like they should have sold it up as it was packed. But I would say I love what they're doing. They're bringing a lot of money to the athletes. I think we'll have to wait another year to see how all the US races go before we can really see if it's going to be a thing. It's also like they're not going to make money year one. I view it as a startup. And like here in San Francisco, there's a ton of startups. I have a ton of friends working at startups. Like the goal is not to make money year one. So I think we need to not judge them on their profitability year one and judge them just on like, does it look like it's a good time to go to this meet? And we'll see when it comes to like Philadelphia and LA, because that's where we'll really know.
Totally. I have some strong thoughts here. So disagree, agree, debate me on them. I'm pretty loose in my opinions mostly, but I think the concept is amazing. I think it was executed poorly. Like when I was watching, it felt like a watered down Diamond League meet. And then I thought, wait, isn't the whole point that this is supposed to be like better and more exciting than the Diamond League? Like the 5K for the men, I think it was the 5K. I don't think it was the 3K, the 5K where Fisher won. I was like, it was kind of boring until the last 52 seconds. And I just don't see it. Like, here's the thing. Like if I showed it to my parents who like don't understand track, and I think that's who Grand Slam like wants to target it as those people that like you stumble across on the TV and they're invested. I think they would just be confused and be like, wait, why are they running so slow? And I'd be like, well, it's about who gets the win. And they'd be like, well, no one's actually trying. Like this is just a dumb strategy. So that, and then I just like don't think the races are that exciting. I think the athletes aren't really prioritizing the races as like the end all be all like a Diamond League because there isn't as much weight to them. And then I think in terms of profitability, agree with you on the startup comment, absolutely. But I think the problem is it's all VC backed. This is business lingo for people. It's all VC backed, and I think they're going to run out way before they have enough profitability to continue. And I think profitability in the short term is important because here's the thing. If enough pro athletes hear comments like the ones I just made about the 5K enough, they're going to be like, well, why am I like completely switching up my track schedule for races that people are like bashing? I don't care how much they're going to pay me to sign on. Like, it's just not interesting. Then they won't get the top athletes, and then even less people will watch.
The second they don't get the top athletes, it's over. I would say
they're riding a fine line, and they could be very successful, but it's really tricky.
Yeah. I would say I totally agreed with your first statement. Great concept, executed poorly. I had my own like things I was dialed in on, being like a visual artist. I was looking at the branding behind the races, the website, the social media, like the way it was shown, like the thing I mentioned about the photographs, like it was this great idea and it didn't seem like it was executed well. I think I hold out a little more faith than you that it could turn into something. I think that a slow race, to the medium core fans, like to your parents who know a little about running, they'd be like, why is it so slow? But if you show it to the average person who we just mentioned is obese and has no money and all these things that you just mentioned, like the very average person also amongst all those things doesn't know a lot about running. And I don't think they would know that a mid 14-minute 5K is slow. They'd be like, wow.
But they're really listening to the announcers, and the announcers are like, this is slower than their tempo pace.
That is a good point.
That's how you frame it. And they framed it
as
is
like, how you frame it. That kind of gets into the execution. Like, good idea, poor execution. I think they could run the same time and have it be sit and kick and be really slow. And they could have it be entertaining by being like, rather than this is slower than Grant's 10K pace, be like, we know Grant can close in a pace 30 seconds faster per lap than this. Do we think he's going to do it? Like, we can talk about how their ability to just pick up the pace is awesome rather than everything else. But I would say hopeful, but still, haven't thrown all my cards in on it yet. If I was an investor, I would not be throwing cash yet. I would be waiting a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think Miami will be super telling. I think it's like I was listening to First Take this morning. I don't know. I'm not even that into NBA, but I'm like obsessed with Stephen A. Smith these days. I think he's just like my Michael Jordan. He's Michael Jordan to basketball, or he's to the sports media world what MJ is to basketball or Tom Brady.
Definitely, I'll give you that.
Yeah. And so I was listening to him this morning, and they were talking about, if the Lakers lose tonight, like whatever, can the Timberwolves beat them? XYZ. Is it a must win for the Lakers? And I feel like Miami is low key like a must win for, like, they need to sell it out.
That's fair.
I don't know where it is,
I was
But I
thinking
think from an optics perspective, they need some momentum.
for me, it was LA. I was like, they need influencers there making content. They need this to be a big weekend, not just a big, nice photo shoot. But
Totally.
yeah, I mean, Grand
I
Slam, if
think
you're
it's
listening,
positive.
yeah, hit us up. Let's make
Send
it
Zach
bigger.
and I.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I think
Yeah.
too, like I will say on the positive, I'm glad that whoever these VC people are, that they
Mhm.
find running like promising enough to throw money
Totally.
into it. I highly
Hmm.
commend Michael Johnson for reinvesting
Totally.
back into the sport and creating
Yeah.
something. I just
Hmm.
get fearful because I think if this doesn't work out, people will forever shit on running and be like, we gave it its chance to like do something new and unique and it flopped. And I think
See,
whatever comes after
yeah,
Grand Slam will be difficult to
I
gain
think
momentum.
possibly. I also think we were just talking about how you have to try and like you'll learn something from the failure. Um, and I think it's about time someone tried that wasn't USATF. Um,
Hmm.
so like from that level alone, I'm beyond grateful that someone's given it the go. Is everything the way I
I
would do
agree.
it? No. Is everything going to be perfect? No. But is it better than USATF already? In my mind, it has more potential. USATF seems like it has a
Mhm.
pretty hard ceiling on it, and Grand Slam seems like it has a very low floor. It could totally bomb out, but it also has a higher ceiling. So, like, if it fails, it definitely is going to be bad. But before it fails, I'd rather talk about like the high ceiling that it potentially could have.
Totally agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are good thoughts. Some
Mhm.
optimism I need in my life right there. Those are really
Yeah.
good takes. I agree
Yeah.
with
We
it.
all we all
I
need a
also
little bit of
think, yeah, again, I think it's like massive net positive, and it
that. Mhm.
failing just puts us at the same place we were at before, which is not
Yeah.
terrible. So, but
Yeah.
it is interesting with these sports like golf with live and like
Mhm.
yeah,
It
all
is
these
really
sports are like
interesting.
honestly really undergoing like these complete revamps of like what
Yeah.
is this sport? What does it look like? What do we do with
Mhm.
money? It's
Yeah. I
fascinating.
mean, it is, yeah, especially it's happening with a lot of like mid-sized sports right now, and it's interesting to be working in one and be like, how's this gonna go? But,
Mhm.
fingers crossed.
You get $100 million donation. What do you do with it? You're the commissioner of USATF.
If I get 100 million right now, 100 million, I can do whatever I want. I'm probably doing something not too different than Grand Slam, except investing. I'd probably take the few races we have, make them huge, and invite all the celebrities and influencers to show up to them and make it just a party. Make it like I would take more notes from F1 in the sense that they have the whole weekend where they're inviting people out there and they're filming content around it. And it's like, maybe you set up like the same way in like marathons where there's the expo where brands want to be involved so they can like, I would have like a business element to it where these brands want to be invested around the sport the same way F1 is. I would say I would pull a lot from F1 if I got $1 billion. I think the Netflix documentary about running was great. Keep more of that going, and then more. My big thing with USATF is their media presence is atrocious, and I would plug a ton of money into that.
You know what's
Yeah,
interesting? The person who did Sprint is the same director as Drive to Survive. I think
yeah,
that's why Sprint was so successful.
mm-hmm.
I think we need more outsiders from outside the sport. Like I think you and I are
Totally,
unique cases where
yeah,
we are doing something unique and creative and it's being
mm-hmm.
successful and we were within the sport. But I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that for you and I came from the awareness that we need to gain inspiration from other sports.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of
Totally,
what I do with my podcast and business, I steal from other sports all the time
exactly. I
because
mean,
there's
I
no one to
think
look to
that's
in the sport.
yeah, I mean, it's still like an artist fate thing. Like that's why, the biggest thing I can do is look at artists from the past and look at other popular artists not in running and be like, oh, that's sick what they did. How can I bring that into running? Like that's just how to be a good creative or a good anything. I think I wrote like a little post on LinkedIn about that the other day where I was like, if you're just looking at running, like you're missing the point right now.
Would you ever do stuff in other sports? Like I know Joe has
Mhm.
like photographed NBA
Yeah.
games, all sorts of. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would, but I would, think about what it is and how it relates to kind of my niche a little bit. But I definitely would. Like, I think I would probably start by thinking endurance sports or sports that are run by in a similar format or through agencies that I'm connected with at the moment. Like, I wouldn't want to just like jump to I mean, I don't know if the NBA came calling and was like, Zach, we want you to make a poster. I'd probably be like, Yeah, I'm down. But like,
Yeah,
I
sure.
would
We'll
try
go
to
with
find a
sign.
way to frame it or to position it on social media or to like talk about it, how it's the next step for me rather than like a complete pivot. Um, and I would also never stop doing running stuff. Running's never going to stop no matter what I end up doing.
That makes sense. Totally.
Yeah.
Other running subject. The U.S. is so back. Connor Mance yesterday, second ever
Yeah.
fastest time in the marathon, nearly broke the American
Mhm.
record, placed fourth. Jess
Yeah.
Ton, close friends with her, super cool story. She's balling out. And then you go back to the Olympics last summer. I know that probably made you super excited
Totally.
as someone who grew up in America and the middle
Yeah.
distances, Cole, Yared,
Dude, yeah.
Hobbs, and
I
just
was
how fast our
hyped.
dudes are
It was a
running.
great time to be
What are
an
your
American.
thoughts? Yeah, what are your
Um,
thoughts on American distance running? Because it's so
I
bad
mean,
compared to May
it is.
2023.
I don't know how much of a hot take it is, but I think it is the future of distance running. And I think especially for me to see it in college, it's kind of like I was in college. I trained with Cole for a tiny bit. I ran against Cole and Yard. Like I kind of saw these names. I was like, damn, they're really good. Like, why am I? What is going on? Like, am I just not that good? Like, I thought I was pretty good. And then to see them at this scale and be like, oh, and to know how much everyone's effort was just under them and right around them, and to be like, wow, this is what college running is in the US right now. And then to see that at the pro level and be like I ran in WCC, I ran against Connor Mance all the time. Like, I know how gritty he is, I know his running style. Like, um, basically, I think, as these middle distance runners move up, they're going to be so good in the marathon and the half marathon, and we can already see it. And we're going to kind of start winning all of those races, I think, in a couple of years. And the high school runners right now are insane. They're like so good when they start coming into the more middle distance races, and they're kind of at that level. Like Jakob is going to have his era right now, and then give it a little bit longer, and I don't know if he will.
Other note to get your thoughts on just general running media, influencers, creative. What do you think's
Mm-hmm.
working? What do you think's not working? And from that conversation back in 2023, like you mentioned, new gen, they've phased out for reasons we don't
Mm-hmm.
need to get into.
Yeah,
Tin
yeah.
Man has completely shifted their business
Mm-hmm.
model.
Totally.
I think a lot of people are either like redefining what they're doing, leaving,
Mm-hmm.
reshaping what they're doing. Like, what do you think works? What do you think doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Tin Man did worked. I think what caused it not to work wasn't what they were doing. It was just their team grew up and their like ability to want to post the type of content that you wanted to post wasn't really there. Um, I think what is working is younger people on social media. I think that's kind of the thing. I think a lot of older people are trying to get on social media and it's just not as authentic to who they are, and it's not their fault. So they're finding their own ways. Like, I think Joey getting on Substack is awesome to see. Joey's blowing up Substack right now. But I think, authenticity works. Trying to be a brand and be very formal doesn't work. That would be an out. Um, I think just like people being themselves on social media is what's going to push this sport forward. And you can see people that, were trying to do something that wasn't themselves, and they're moving on to different things for whatever reason. And that's not Tin Man. I'm not adding them. I think them leaving onto something else is them being themselves. And I think that's awesome to see.
What do you
Yeah.
think brands within running, big brands, Hoka, Nike, Brooks,
Yeah.
Under Armour, you name it, should
I mean, we've
be
seen big
doing
brands
differently?
boom recently, which is cool. Like, Ons wasn't a brand as much 5 years ago, and they're huge. Same with Hoka. Honestly, Hoka's boomed a lot. I think it'll be interesting to see them move into track. I think I'm big in kind of the run club marathon scene at the moment, just because that's kind of where a lot of my work comes from. And being in San Francisco, there's an awesome run club culture, and it's cool to see the brand's presence there. Um, I haven't seen that type of presence move as much into track yet, so it'll be cool to see that kind of trickle down happen. Um, but I mean, I think what's working for brands is just like showing up on the ground level first and being authentic and like not pushing their brand, but just being themselves and like finding people who are already doing cool things and telling that story. Um, I think Solomon does a great job. I think On's doing a phenomenal job. Bandit's storytelling is insane. Like, if you see Bandit's videos they're putting out right now, I'm like, wow, like that is next level content. I think that's the type of content that brands outside of running are looking into running and being like, oh, we need to be doing this. Um, which is cool to have, something from our sport be at that level where it's being pulled as inspiration from outside of our sport.
Let's talk about perhaps the most interesting thing that we've teased, which is a book you just came out with. It's so big, it's hard to even put in front of the camera. The Last Olympic Trials, written by the man Zach Litoff. Inspiration for this book, where did it come from? And I'm, asking questions like I haven't read it. It's amazing.
Yes.
It's also cool. You remember Isaac from this past summer? Shout out, he'll be editing this. But he came over to like shoot an ad read or something, and he saw this on my like in my front room on my table, like it's a coffee book. It's great. And he was like, oh my gosh, is this Zach, like who I met last summer? Like this is so sick. And he was like flipping through it. So anyways, inspiration, where'd the book come from, and what was kind of the process from inception of idea to actually publishing it?
Yeah. So basically, I'd say the idea kind of started when, at USA's the year before, when I went out, was like, I'm going to meet as many people as I can. I'm going to kind of try to establish myself in this running world. And then over the next year, I had a couple bigger projects. I feel like that next year was me growing into the sport, and kind of that transition from being a runner as identity to being a artist as identity, but still like obviously still a runner, had kind of happened 95% of the way. And I think that Olympic trials was something that like through my entire running career was something I knew was coming. Like as I was, an NCAA steeplechaser competing at the top level, I was like, Olympic trials 2024, like that's going to be a big year. And so kind of like being at that 95% transition point, but not fully there was a little bit of like holding out, like, damn, it would be cool to be running in this. But obviously I wasn't, and I wasn't training to do it. So it wasn't like something I was putting, my eggs weren't in that basket. And I kind of just was like, I'm going to show up. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go there and give it everything I can to art. So I like did the same thing, road tripped up with some friends, packed the back of his truck full of like every art supplies I owned. I brought like my printer, all my paintbrushes, my paints, my like ton of paper. I brought like all my film cameras. I brought 10 rolls of film and had to buy a couple more when I was there. Just kind of like came without a real goal of what I was going to make, but kind of this like feeling inside me of like, this is going to be the point probably where I like make this transition or revert back. Like I'm going to show up and kind of make how it feels authentic to me while I'm there. And kind of once I sat in the stands, I wrote a little bit about it in the intro, but like day one, we get there on June 21st, which was actually the day I turned 25 as well. So it was a big like life transition point. And we get in, it's my birthday. First thing I do is I'm going to go to the track so I can just get a feeling of how I'm going to get in, how I'm going to get cameras around, like see how this is going to go. I make my way into the stadium and I'm kind of sitting there like 2 hours before the first race. And I'm like kind of sitting with this feeling of like, almost like pre-race nerves from 2 hours before a race. And I know like 2 hours before a race is when I drink coffee. Like all these things of like a very similar version of me would be sitting in these exact same stands with the exact same feelings, but towards something totally different. And it was like a very hard feeling to sit with. And I kind of just sat there and was like, okay, what could I make? And it was about how can I kind of like take what I have that's unique to me and tell a story about running that's not being told. And so that story was kind of like, I called it the Last Olympic Trials. And it's like a double play on like, it's the Last Olympic Trials because it was the last Olympic Trials for me to show up in that way where I was like a runner first. But it's also the Last Olympic Trials because of everything we're talking about. We're like, Netflix was going to make this huge documentary about it. I was able to get in tickets every day, very cheap. I think that's going to change. I was able to come in as a creator and kind of sneak around the rules and make content. I definitely think that's going to change. A lot of like small stories of the trial, this like tight knit community of like how I would just see you around and be like, oh, yo, what's up? And like, the running world's very small. I feel like as running grows, that will change. Like I kind of was thinking about how the running world's booming right now and how it's a good thing, but also like this is the last one of this like old era. And I kind of just wanted to like tell a lot of those stories of things that I think will change through my artwork. And that was kind of the like underlying theme of the book. But it's also just a lot of fun art.
160 plus pages of art. What can people expect to pick up a copy when they open it? Give them some perspective.
I mean, I think I would think of it first as a coffee table book before you think it's too deep. Like you're going to open it up and flip through pages and kind of just be like wanting to flip to the next page, seeing cool artwork on each page. There's a couple different themes of the book. There's one where it's portraits. There's a whole section on multimedia art, which is a lot of like portraits so the portraits I drew over. Then the multimedia art is a lot of like photos from the race, all taken on my great grandpa's old camera. And then the next section is just kind of like regular art. So that's a lot of paintings. And then the next section is Polaroids. And then the final section is just regular photography. But it's just kind of 160 pages of like little pieces of art, tiny bit of writing, but mainly art.
Where can people pick up a copy or check it out if they want to learn more about it?
Litoffstudios.com. If you go to the little shop section, it'll be probably the first thing.
I also want to ask you, and I know this is probably hard to do, but like favorite page or favorite drawing or photo in the book? Have you thought about this?
Yeah, it's definitely changed for me a ton. I would say favorite drawing is there's one that's all red and it's of Noah Lyles. If you like turn the book on its side, you can kind of see it because it shines through on the binding. That one kind of just like, this is a great photo I took of Noah, but I didn't know exactly what to do with it. And it kind of like, I did tons of different versions of it. And what I ended up with, it kind of feels like, as I've shown a lot of people that book, everyone like stops on that one and really looks. And I kind of think that's the best drawing in there. My favorite is there's a portrait of Marie Del Toro. She was an usher on section like 218 and 116. Someone that I got really close with throughout the trials. And it's kind of just one of those stories that I feel like as the sport grows, those types of stories get smaller. I gave her a little shout out on the very back page or one of the back sections as I kind of tell some of the stories about some of the people I met. But I kind of did this cool portrait of her with tons of really colorful flowers, and she was definitely a very special person to get to meet. So, yeah.
What would you say the last Olympic trials symbolizes to you in terms of the whole world of like writing, creating, making books? Like, what do you feel like the future of Litoff Studios is?
Yeah. I think I probably said this last time I was on, and I still kind of stand by it. Like, Litoff Studios is always evolving, and I never know exactly what the next step is. I think this was me putting out there that I can make art, and I really want to make more art. I just recently had like a solo art show that was really cool. And I definitely want to get more into, like fine art rather than like, illustration and design. I don't think this is the transition point for that for me, but I think this is kind of like that first step. The first thing you put out isn't going to be your best work. And I think I have like this journey of fine art for me is going to last over a long period of time. But I think this is definitely something that I'll look back at when I'm a lot older and be like, wow, I really like poured my heart and soul into this 160 page book, and my feelings are all written down in it. And like how many of them I'll stand by at that point, we'll see. But like, it is definitely something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, man, you should be. So congratulations, because it's super sick, and I've flipped through it multiple times at this point. So if you're out there and one, by buying it, you're going to have a sick piece on your coffee table. But two, it's always cool to support someone who deserves support. So go support Zach and his work, and someone who's trying to make their way in a small sport that's quickly exploding. So congrats, man, because it's sick. And like I've known you for not too long, but long enough to know that like this is big for you. So it's really cool to see, man.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to ask you, wrapping up this conversation, because you're fast, you move one foot in front of the other very, very well. All the kids out there in their track season, how can they maximize it? How can they make it the best season yet?
One advice I would say is do strides. I'm sure everyone's doing strides, but make sure you're actually doing strides. Do them every day if you can. That would be my like 1%er that I think makes the biggest difference. And if you're like, I already do strides after every workout and once a week, then like add in one more section of strides. I think for me, it just makes your form better. It makes you faster. It gives you better turnover. And number 2 would probably be like, get sleep and eat good food. Don't overthink it. Like, if you're stressed, you're not going to run as well. Obviously, if you're not stressed at all, you're not going to run as well. So find that happy medium for you. But like, a happy runner is a faster runner. So like, try to enjoy it.
Zach, can be anything. What's the final words you want to impart on the listeners today? Final word of advice.
Yeah. Final word of advice is, make sure you enjoy whatever you're doing in your life right now. And if you're not enjoying it, pivot and find something that makes you happy, because why else would we be living?
I love it. Zach, Always
Yeah.
appreciate our conversations. Always feels weird to have you on the podcast because we talk so extensively
Yeah,
outside of
fair.
it. But
Good, yeah. Well, thank
final
you for
note
having
for
me.
you: where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Litoff Studios. Same thing on TikTok, although I don't use TikTok as much. And my website's litoffstudios.com. Basically, anywhere you could search, just search Litoff Studios, and I'm probably there. But,
I love it. Zach, thank you so much. Appreciate the time. And also appreciate you for your contributions to the sport, both through literal ways that impact me, like rebranding my whole company, as well as
yeah,
really unique, cool pieces like this book, and the ways you contribute to brands and athletes, and just the voice that you are on social media is so cool to follow along and know the incredible human you are off the Instagram page, off the book. Yeah, so keep crushing it, man. And it's awesome.
yeah. Well, thank you. That means a lot.